Hello everybody, Professor Scalar here, and welcome to the R4A2 guide. A level that seems pretty straightforward and easy with just the main objective turns quite brutal and difficult for newer players once you add on the overload and extreme routes. Starting off, let's talk about what I recommend for your loadout for R4A2. For this level, I would recommend 2 sentries, 1 seafoam launcher, and then the 4th tool varying depending on what objectives you're going to be doing. If you are doing the overload objective, I highly recommend the bio tracker. If you're not doing the overload objective though, I would say take a mine deployer. The reason for this is because the overload bulkhead door is going to initiate an error alarm, and having a bio tracker for that is going to be very beneficial. However, if you're not doing it, then there are many good opportunities to use the mine deployer. The main reason I say you don't want to use the mine deployer if you are using the overload is because the bio tracker is almost mandatory in my opinion. The seafoam and the 2 sentries are very beneficial, and while mines are also beneficial, you can replace the usefulness of them by using the deployable mines you can randomly find throughout the map. You could also swap out that seafoam launcher for another sentry if you really want to. If you do that though, then I would recommend prioritizing the auto sentries over the burst, due to the fact that the auto sentries are going to be staggering enemies and you are going to want to stall them out a bit in certain situations. I'll explain a little bit more about all of that later though as we go through the level. Loading into R4A2, you see that your main objective is to find 2 cryogenic cases and bring them back to extraction. The first one will always be in zone 44, while your second one will be in either zone 45 or zone 46. You begin the level in zone 42. In this zone, you can find your first bulkhead door control, a bulkhead door to the west that leads to zone 108, a basic security door to the north that leads to zone 43, and a class 2 alarm door to the east that leads to zone 44. In this situation, you want to do the alarm door first, that way there are fewer spawn locations for these enemies and there's less that you have to worry about. Here is the floor plan for this alarm door, and these are the doors you're going to want to keep your eyes on because these are the ones that they could potentially come through. In this situation, you can try to funnel enemies through one direction by opening this door here and making sure everything else is shut. However, it is not foolproof. I have tried to do this funnel strategy before, and sometimes they will still break down 2 doors and go the other way just to get to my team. This mainly depends on where they spawn in specifically in that room and where you're standing in your room. I would recommend trying to funnel them as you'll probably get more of them to go that direction and you can focus more resources on that direction. However, do keep in mind that they might also come from the other direction. Once you finish this alarm door though, you can head into zone 44. Zone 44 doesn't really have too much I need to mention. You're going to find your first cryogenic case, which is going to look like this as you can see on screen. Bring this with you back to extraction. You're going to see a red extraction circle appear once you pick this up. Just drop it right next to it. And you will also find a power cell in this zone. You're going to want to pick up that power cell and bring it with you back to zone 42, and then take it with you to the north into zone 43. In zone 43, you're going to find a second power cell, which you can take back to the bulkhead door in zone 42, as that will be of use later on in the level if you are doing the alternate objectives. You will find 2 generators and 2 alarm doors, both of which being class 2 alarm doors, one to the west and one to the east. For these doors, you need to put a power cell into their corresponding generator to get them to work. So if you haven't already, use a terminal to query where the second cryogenic case is, that way you know which zone you have to go into. If you are heading to the east, this is what your floor plan is going to look like. There are quite a few doors that enemies could come through, so I would highly recommend trying to funnel them. In this situation, open these 2 doors here. This won't guarantee it, but it will increase the odds of the enemies coming through and going for this door here, where you can focus more of your resources. If you're doing the door to the west though, this is what your floor plan is going to look like. Same situation as before, I recommend opening these 3 doors here to try to funnel them through them. If it does work, they will all come for this door here. If not though, then they may take one of these 2 other doors. If you have a bio tracker, you can tell in advance whether or not the funnel is working, which is pretty useful. Once you have finished the alarm door, head into either zone 45 or 46, whichever one you have. In both situations, there's really not much you have to worry about. Grab your resources, get the second cryogenic case, and start heading back to where you loaded into the level. With both cryogenic cases in hand, you have completed your main objective. If you place them both into the extraction scan, it will initiate an extraction alarm that you're going to have to hold off against while you wait for it to fill up to 100%. Since we're already here, let's quickly talk about the extraction alarm for those of you who just want to complete the main objective and not touch the extreme or the overload objective. This is what your floor plan is going to look like for the extraction. As you can see, there are only 2 rooms that they can spawn in, which means these 3 doors are the only ones that they might come through. This right here is a room divider, so it is considered a separate room, however there's no doorway you can block off. My recommendation is just seafoam and mine all the doors are still there. If you use the funnel strategy from earlier and it worked out just fine, then all 3 doors should still be intact. If not, it's not a huge deal. This extraction alarm is not too hard to deal with. Just place down your turrets right in front of you to shoot and stagger enemies that come after you. Hold the line together, communicate, and get that up to 100% and you are out of there. However, for those of you who want to complete the overload and the extreme objective, you're not done yet, and the rest of the level is not going to be any easier than what you've already done. Heading into Zone 108, make sure you're bringing that spare power cell with you. You're going to want to bring that to the 109 bulkhead door on the far west side. You can see that your extreme objective is to find an HSU and gather a sample from it. This HSU can be in one of 3 different zones, 110, 111, or 112. So use a terminal to query it now before things get a bit hectic. Also in the zone, you will find the other bulkhead door control, a bulkhead key, and another bulkhead door to the south which leads to 241. This will be your overload objective. If you want to do every single objective in one run, you have to do the overload objective first. The final bulkhead key is behind there in zone 241, but there is no bulkhead key down in 109 or any of the other 3 zones. This is where things get a bit interesting though, because the bulkhead door to zone 241 has an error alarm on it. Since this is the first time an error alarm has appeared in this rundown, let's take a quick moment to explain that for those of you who do not know how these things work. Error alarms are pretty unique in the fact that once they're initiated, they don't shut off. They will stay active for the rest of the level unless if it's a special type of level with a mechanic that once you complete an objective, it will turn it off. This level is not one of those. Once this error alarm is initiated, it will be on for the rest of the level. How they work will vary a little bit from level to level, but in most situations, you will have 4 enemies spawned in every 30 seconds. The rule of 2 will still apply with this type of alarm door. Now, on its own, that doesn't sound too bad. It sounds pretty easy to deal with. You could just simply hammer all 4 enemies and not have to worry too much about it. The true deadliness of the error alarm though is not directly connected to it and rather connected to the rooms that might get set off because of these enemies. If the enemy spawn 2 rooms ahead of you, there's a chance that they can set off that entire room and then set off the room that's 1 room away from you as they come to get to you, due to either banging on doors or just simply screaming in the middle of the room. For this reason, you're going to want to split up your team into 2 groups, an attacker team and a defender team. The attacker team is meant to go into the next zone and start killing enemies as fast as they can, focusing less on objectives and resources and more so on just clearing out everything so they don't get set off. The defender team though is going to be staying outside of the zone and they want to kill off any enemies that spawn behind them so they don't run into the new zone and set off enemies by shouting. Normally you want to have 2 people on each team. In some situations you could have 1 attacker and 3 defenders. This will make it so that you move slower as an attacker, but there's a higher chance of the enemy spawning behind the defenders and not in there with you. My recommendation though is your bio tracker should always be the person who's on the attacker team. Knowing what type of enemies and how many enemies you're going to have to deal with in the next room before you open it is very beneficial. And I would highly recommend that whenever you see a level with an error alarm, bring a bio tracker. It will save you a lot of grief in the long run. Now that we've talked about error alarms in general though, let's talk about how you can beat this one in R4A2. For this error alarm, your defender should stay in zone 108. Keep the doors open as you will need those for the alarm door to zone 109, and try to use melee to kill these enemies instead of your weapons. There's only going to be about 4 of them, and most of the time they come in a group of 2 and then another group of 2, so it's pretty easy to melee them to death without losing any health. Your attackers need to move through zone 241 quickly. Don't stop to hack boxes or hit the locks off of them. Just keep moving and clear out enemy after enemy. You have a pretty good chance of seeing multiple scouts in this zone, so try to kill those first if you're able to. Whoever your biotracker person is, keep an eye on that thing, because if the wave spawns in front of you later into the zone, you want to know so you can either shoot and kill the scout that's in your room, or get out of this quickly enough so that there's a higher chance that that room won't get set off since the enemies aren't going to stop and scream at you. Once you have cleared out all 3 rooms in zone 241, you need to go to the very back room where your one and only terminal will be. Your overload objective is to use the terminal and put in the deactivate life support command. It's a pretty long command, but if you just hit D and then tab, it will autocomplete all of it. Once you hit enter, a full team scan will appear. There is no alarm attached to this one, thankfully, so once your entire team is there and you finish that full team scan, this objective is completed. Go throughout the rest of the zone, collect any resources you might have missed, and make sure you grab the bulkhead key. Once you have all of that, head back to zone 108, where you can put the bulkhead key into the door control, which will unlock the bulkhead door to the west, leading to zone 109. The bulkhead door to zone 109 is a class 2 cluster alarm, so nothing too terribly difficult. This is what your floor plan is going to look like for this. Enemies are only going to be spawning in this room, or they will spawn back down in zone 241. If they do, they're going to be spawning in this room right here, so this is the only door you have to worry about. In zone 108 though, these are the 2 doors that you're going to want to focus on. Most of the time they come through this door here, so I would focus more of your resources on this one. A good thing to do, by the way, is wait till an error alarm wave spawns in, kill it, then place down your turrets, your mines, and your seafoam, and then initiate the door. That way you're not going to have to waste any of these resources on the 4 enemies that come through just because you're starting it a little bit too soon. Once you have completely cleared out every single enemy and this is safe, you're doing the same thing as before. Defenders, stay in zone 108, try to keep enemies away. Your attackers head into zone 109 and clear out every single enemy in there. Once the attackers have cleared out all the enemies in zone 109, your defenders can come in, and that power cell I've been telling you to drag along this entire time finally gets some purpose. In here there are 3 alarm doors, one to the north, 110, one to the south, 111, and one to the west, which is 112. Each one of these doors require power to be restored to a generator. You can see the location of all 3 of them on screen here. Go up to the door you need and see which generator is corresponded with it, because the closest generator is not always going to be the correct one. Once you found the one you need, put that power cell in, and that will allow you to initiate the cluster 3 alarm door that's on each one of them. All 3 of them are the same, that does not change depending on the route you get. These cluster 3 alarms are pretty annoying with this room. This is a big open room and it's all one room, so they can go anywhere in it. And most of the time they're going to go pretty much all the way across the room and then back a little bit and make you run around every which way but loose. My recommendation is put your turrets and your seafoam over here at this door, since this is the only entrance to the room. You could try to barricade the doors outside of this zone, but unfortunately they will most likely be broken open already due to the previous alarm door, so you really don't have anything to slow enemies down. This is the reason why I say you should focus auto sentries and seafoam, that way you can slow down some of them and not get giant hordes on top of you. Once you have finished the full team scan, I would recommend 1 or 2 people on your team should go near the bulkhead door and shoot enemies as they try to come through. The turrets and the seafoam are going to stall them and kill a few of them, but a lot of them are still going to make it through. If you have 1 or 2 people over there though, you can deal with them while they're in a choke point, rather than when they're spread out throughout the room chasing you around corners. The other people can focus on the scan. This will make it take a little bit longer to finish the scan, and you may get 1 or even 2 extra waves of enemies, but this is probably better than letting all the enemies get in there at once. Once you have finished all of these scans, finish off every single enemy that's still coming through before you open up the door. Once everything's cleared out though, once again your defenders will stay in zone 109 to defend from any enemies coming from the outside. Your attackers are going to be heading into whatever zone you have to go to find the HSU. All 3 zones are very different in structure, however the way you want to handle them is almost the same across the board. There are many different HSU locations, and while they are always the same in the locations, the one you need is going to be different almost every single time. Instead of showing you the location of all the HSUs and telling you to run between all of them, I would recommend make your way to the very first terminal inside the zone. In 110, this is what your map layout looks like, so I would highly recommend making your way towards either one of these terminals. Both of them are pretty viable. Zone 111, this is what your map's going to look like. Make it towards this terminal, since this one you can find very quickly. Use that to find the HSU. And Zone 112, this is what it looks like. This is going to be your best terminal to go for. You want to move through here quickly, clearing out any enemies, getting to the terminal, checking HSUs along the way, and then pinging where the correct HSU is. If it's really far in the back of the zone, I recommend your defenders come up to the terminal and they keep pinging it, while the attackers keep moving forward dealing with enemies. Once you find the HSU, do not activate it until everybody's there and you are ready to. This HSU will initiate a full team scan, just like the terminal from Zone 241. However, this time, there will be an alarm attached to it. The scan goes by quick enough that you only get one wave of enemies, but you still don't want to pull that prematurely. Because there are many different locations for the HSUs, I don't have a floor plan for every single one of them, just to show you where enemies could potentially spawn. Just remember that they can spawn 2 rooms away from you, so any doors you have connected to the room you're in, you should shut, put a mine on, put a C-foam on, turrets, whatever you want to defend. Just barricade yourself a little bit so you can deal with these enemies. Once you finish the scan, clear out all of these enemies. You could choose to run past them and just go back to extraction, but since extraction scan takes a while and it initiates another alarm, you don't really want to deal with those enemies and with these enemies at the same time. Once a wave is cleared off, all 4 of you book it back to the beginning, and then set up for the extraction scan just like I taught you earlier. Once you have finished all of that though, you've beaten this level and you should get prisoner efficiency for doing all 3 objectives in the same run. As always, if there's anything important that I forgot, you have your own tips or tricks that you want to share about this level, or if you have any questions for me, leave them down in the comments. I love reading through them when I've got the time to and answering any questions you may have. If you liked the video and it helped you beat this level, then hit that like button. It helps me out and it helps this video get noticed by people who need this guide. And if you enjoy my content and you like what I do, then consider subscribing to the channel and becoming part of the community. Ring that bell notification, that way you get notified the next time I post a video. I hope you're all staying safe during these difficult times, you're having a blast, and I'll see you all in the next video.